Welcome to WeTalk. Those of you who are new to the live stream or to the room, this is a show for and about the women shaping our culture across everything from entertainment to entrepreneurship to government to the arts. And it's sort of celebrating the work that women do and looking at the world through their eyes. And that's the idea of bringing women together, some of whom know each other, some of whom don't. And all of you in the room, it's so important that you're here. The idea is to move Me Too to We Do. That was kind of the concept that when I thought of the show. I'm your host, Ondi Timoner, and I am joined by 2 Cosby survivors and 2 Weinstein survivors to look at where we are. Yes, I'm so grateful to. I'm going to sit down, making the microphone go. No, I'm fine. I'm so grateful to the 4 of you for coming out here, for all the work that you've been doing. Yes. This is a slide that Jessica provided earlier today. Yeah. This show is really we're not in the business of dredging up the particulars of the crimes that were perpetrated against these 4 great women, or all of these women here that are numbered in these massive numbers. But really to look at how they turn their personal nightmares into empowering innovation by coming together and forming community and making something that had Lili suicidal into, something that has changed law forever, removing the statute of limitations on rape crimes in California, for example. They did that. Yeah. I'll start at the end. Victoria Valentino is the author of Dirty Diamonds, The Repurposed Life of a Cosby Survivor and Playboy Playmate, her soon-to-be-published memoir. She was a Playboy centerfold, Miss September, in fact, in 1963. In 1969, shortly after the drowning death of her 6-year-old son, she was raped by Bill Cosby. She and Lili have lobbied for the Justice for Victims Act in California, which eliminated the 10-year statute of limitations on sexual assault cases, which opened the door really for the Weinstein survivors years and years later. Victoria testified before the Senate committee to get the bill passed and has become an activist and speaker for the Me Too movement and for sexual assault survivors. She's currently writing a musical about the lifelong circle of friendship of her Playboy bunny family. Yeah. Yay. Okay. Lili Bernard was an actress on The Cosby Show and Seinfeld. She was blacklisted by Cosby after he drugged her and raped her. She's an activist against rape, started #EndRapeSOL, statute of limitations, and helped California eliminate the statute of limitations through a number of extremely innovative, performative acts. So let's look at some of Lili's shots. Yeah, so there's Lili and Victoria together. And so people who were in their own tunnel and nightmare met and went out there and spoke out and urged other people to speak out. And that's how these men eventually were called out into the light. Yeah. And onto the carpet. Yeah. Caitlin Dulany is an actress you might know from Criminal Minds and Project X. She helped fellow Weinstein survivor Jessica Barth to start a nonprofit initiative Jessica thought of, empowering victims to use their voices, which Jessica founded to bring women who have survived abuse from the same perpetrator together. When I heard of it, I thought of it like it's so brilliant, like a dating app for survivors. Let's unite and go, not really date, but let's bond and go get them together. Yeah. Which is kind of what they've done. So Caitlin is one of the first silence breakers in the documentary Untouchable about Weinstein. She's a member of Time's Up Entertainment Safety Working Committee. The group was instrumental in SAG-AFTRA's plans to create standardized guidelines for on-set intimacy coordinators, which is something we talked at length about. There's a long way to go. And both of you talked about just how DIY this has to be, but what really hasn't been that we've ever done as women. We kind of have to do it ourselves. So that's what we're doing. So I want to hear about that. Welcome to the show. Jessica is best known for her part in Ted, but she's a hero of mine for being one of the first silence breakers regarding Weinstein. She founded Voices in Action, advocates for young girls and foster youth, and is writing a book and collection of essays about Me Too and her experiences right now. Welcome to WeTalk. Yeah. So it was, I don't know what you know about just how far back all of this started, because really it entered our consciousness, it seems like a few years ago. But it was really years and years and years ago. I mean, you're probably one of the first or early victims, right, or survivors of Cosby. I mean, we're talking like it was 2005 when survivors began speaking out about him being a rapist. That's 15 years ago. And allegations go back as far as 1965. But the Me Too movement was officially started in 2006 by Black activist Tarana Burke, who used the term on MySpace. And then obviously we know that the most recent news about Bill Cosby's, his attempt to appeal was just denied, which is a win for. So, we've come a long way. And I guess let's start with the positive. I want to start with the Cosby survivors because chronologically it makes sense.
Yeah.
You really paved the way for, taking down Harvey Weinstein and many others. Tell us about, how hard it was to get heard, what you had to do, and how important it was to know each other. And I understand from talking with each one of you over the last few weeks preparing for this show, you have networks. I mean, you guys are talking every day, almost every day, speaking out, doing press, start wherever you want.
Well, in 1969, first of all, I was under contract to Capitol Records to record an album of my own songs. And my little boy, who was 6 and biracial, Afro-Cuban father, Lili is Afro-Cuban, which lends itself to our bond. We have some of these sensitivities and things in common. But my son drowned in my music attorney's swimming pool at the beginning of a party that was given to celebrate the successful negotiation of my recording contract. So needless to say, I lost my music with my son, and my life ended. And I really kind of needed to be braille, I was brailing around, trying to sort out my life and friends, my dear bunny friend, who will be probably the center character of my musical, Francesca, one of the chocolate bunnies. She had a friend take me by the elbow and guide me around because I was walking underwater. So, this was 1969. I was 25. And I was running out of my advance money from Capitol, and I was living on her floor, basically. And so she said, I know Bill Cosby. All these guys used to play the Playboy Club circuit. And so we were all buddies, the bunnies and the comedians. And so I went in. She said, take that picture of Tony, my son. And it was this really intense 8x10 black and white picture, headshot, with his little 60s afro. And he was looking right in the lens. And it was like he was looking deep into your soul. And she said, take it with you and tell Cos, because he was really good to me when I got fired from Playboy and I had to go get food stamps and all this stuff. And so I did, expecting possibly that he would give me a job on whatever show he was working. And the guy was like so completely, I don't know, like a cardboard cutout. He just looked at the picture. And it got so uncomfortable, I, of course, blamed myself. I said, well, I'm such a completely emotional basket case. Who's going to run the risk of hiring me for any kind of an acting part? I could hardly function. And so I just got up and I left, but I ran into him again later at the Café Figaro. Unbeknownst to me, he was part owner, and he had the hots for my roommate, an actress with pale white blue eyes. So that was sort of where it started. And it was the last straw broken on my back, which was pretty much already broken. So I took off And I was gone for 12 years on walkabout, my own personal walkabout. So I now am not only an actress and a public speaker, I also trim goat hooves. I know how to milk a goat. I make a hell of a good Cajun gumbo, and I can grow vegetables, okay? So, and I crochet. But these are things that I picked up along the way as part of my healing process, because I found that healing is enabled through creative action. You know, you can tell your stories, and I do spoken word, and Lili and I also are keynote speakers, but it was doing something physical, like crocheting. You know, it's meditative, and yet at the end of it, you have a hat, you know, you have a blanket, you've got a muffler. And so it gives you kind of a short-term goal that gives you something positive at the end. And it, in little tiny steps, it helps reinforce that you're okay, that you're capable of doing something right.
Lili, what happened to you was so devastating. To all of you was so devastating that for you, beyond that, your career was blocked, actively blocked by him. How did that happen, and what did that lead to? Like, when did you see an opening to being able to get justice for everyone?
Be able to get justice.
Like you were, yeah.
Well,
to be able to go out there and speak finally and have people actually listen.
Well,
and
all
hear
of
you.
us are barred from getting legal justice because of the arbitrary time limit called the statute of limitations. And in my case, the crime that I reported in Atlantic City was just a few months outside of the statute of limitations. So all the evidence that I have a lot of compelling evidence, including, tape recorded conversations from back in the 1990s. I have witnesses, third-party witnesses. My boyfriend at the time saw me come home drugged by Bill Cosby. We confronted Bill Cosby together. He threatened both of our lives when we told him that we would report him to the police. I have my agent at the time, who's a witness. She was always trying very hard to convince me to call the police, but I was terrified for my life. But prior to the Cosby Show, I think what all four of us represent here are thespians whose careers were derailed by either the trauma of the sexual assault and by the blackballing. Bill Cosby made it very clear that he blacklisted me. He said he would, and he did. But then there's the trauma. Victoria and I were both suicidal after the trauma. And what I was just thinking about today, this morning I got a call from Graham Boley, who's one of the New York Times reporters. And Victoria and I and other Cosby survivors, spent every day at the first trial in 2017, at the retrial in 2018, and then at the sentencing hearing. And so we formed very intimate relationships, not just amongst ourselves, but also amongst the reporters. And so when Graham called me this morning with his British accent, I'm like, oh, what did I miss, Graham? Something happened this morning? He's like, yeah. Like they rejected his appeal, and I was like, wow! I screamed, and the first thing I said is that, justice prevails. But I also said that, and I'm quoted in the New York Times saying that the justice system is finally catching up to modern culture. Modern culture being the Me Too movement, because rape is a vehicle that has been used to disempower not just women, but to disempower principalities since at least 1492. It's the linchpin of colonization. And we saw that at the Cosby trial, because Cosby, it was very clear that he most likely hired people to harass and intimidate us. So you saw the power of the principality. And Cosby he was in the 1990s when I guest starred on The Cosby Show, he was one of the most powerful people in the entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. And prior to my guest starring on The Cosby Show, I had co-starred in Stephen King's Golden Years, for which I was commended in Variety magazine. I starred in a BBC film opposite Ving Rhames and Eric LaSalle, and Sean Day-Lewis wrote a paragraph about me on the Sunday Telegraph. And so the devastation of the derailment of the career was not just personal, in that, oh, here's America's father figure mentoring me, and now he's just, a rapist. But there's also, your life, your stake, and to me, I'm a thespian. I was trained in theater, Ivy League actor. So it's like your whole life is at stake. And so for us, I think it was very poignant for the four of us to be sitting here and listening to these badass four women directors and producers. I think it was a very poignant experience for all of us.
Well, and to that, and as true to my promise that this would be something where we're looking also at what has come out of it, there's been a great amount of community, right? It's changed all of your lives in horrible, horrible ways. But then there's also this silver lining, right? That's coming around now, hopefully.
Yeah,
As soon as we found out about
Lili, you're...
she immediately texted us, and there were about 5 of us, and we were just texting all day. Oh,
and
thank you.
One of the comments that I made to my sisters, my survivor sisters, like half a dozen of us texting today about this great news, was that has become evident to me now after 5 years of our public speaking on this, that our suffering was actually necessary for all these wonderful changes to happen. Because were it not for our suffering, we would not have campaigned and lobbied and abolished the statute of limitations. We would not be working with Harvey Weinstein survivors to change more laws. So that in a case, I've always said that as an actor and as an artist, a visual artist, that my suffering is the touchstone of my creativity, but here it's also the touchstone of a great movement, and that is the empowerment of women, that women are finally being not just believed, but they're being valued. And that's why the Me Too movement has affected things like an increase in the numbers of women directors that we're seeing. So it's not just the believability of women, but the empowerment of women, the valuing of women.
What was the most to essentially to direct the media, right, attention until the law followed, right? You need to make enough noise. You needed to get people to feel confident enough to speak out. I mean, has that been...
Still doing that.
Okay. Yeah. Caitlin, you want to say something about that?
Oh, sure. There's a lot. There's lots. So, what I did want to say about that, like these guys. Oh, do I need the microphone?
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
think
Yeah,
our
something
mics
happened to mine, I think. I don't know what happened.
I felt like my mic wasn't working when I was starting to talk. Is it just Victoria or? Okay.
We're still doing that because, well, first of all, we also, as Harvey Weinstein survivors, organized. There's an email of 30 plus of us, and then we've also outside that group worked with other Pamela Guest, who's sitting here. Other survivors. We're like community organizers or something. There's like all different groups that are working on different things. With Pam, Jessica and I have gotten ourselves elected into SAG, and we formed an LA local sexual harassment committee. And not only were we really pushed the idea of intimacy coordinators forward with SAG in the press.
Tell everybody what that means, basically.
And also working with Time's Up Entertainment Safety Group, which we're part of. So intimacy coordinators are it's kind of like stunt safety. When actors do intimate scenes, there's a lot of room for uncomfortableness and trauma. And I mean, pretty much any time I've done in the past any kind of nude scene, you move along. There's like, you want to take off your top, or or how about you get nude in the shower, or somebody sticks their tongue too far down your throat, stuff like that. And it's so intimacy coordinators people have been starting to use them on shows like HBO's Deuce. Is that what is Deuce?
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. And what we wanted with SAG is for them to endorse that, and hopefully we're hoping to make intimacy coordinators part of the contract with producers, to make sure that those are provided on sets in scenes where people are dealing with intimacy, and not to help the whole thing to be not as watchdogs, but to help it to be choreographed where everybody's free and comfortable and the director's vision is set and people aren't traumatized. But that's that's just a little part of some of us have really been focused on preventing sexual assault and reporting and things like that in the entertainment business, because that's where it happened to us, and there's a lot of change that still needs to happen. I mean, there's not much that has happened, but we're working towards much more change within that, within our industry.
And what Lily said, I mean, it's across all industries.
It's across
But
all
I'm sitting here
industries.
looking at all of you beautiful women, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, don't come up against these people. Like, that you don't want to be, like, first of all, I mean, you're actors, you're
Yeah.
musicians, you have talent.
Yeah.
I have a clip, I think, that you gave me of a little bit, right? Didn't Lily give us a good clip? An example. You got clips. I know you got clips.
Well, that's me and Jessica with Ronan Farrow. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, our hero. So,
Yeah.
So he interviewed everybody. How many? Well, he broke the story. for the New York
Yeah, he
Times.
broke the story. He's a big champion of whistleblowers of all kinds. He broke that story. He broke the NBC story, and he'll continue to break a lot of stories. And he said
was
to
actually, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
He was actually, I mean, the New York Times article came out. They were both working on articles about Weinstein at the same time. The New York Times article came out. But with Ronan, the difference, what made his article unique was that pretty much everybody in that article gave their name. If not everybody, I can't remember, but there was 13 victims of Weinstein, and we all gave our names because we trusted Ronan so much.
Jessica, tell us about the idea of Voices in Action.
So Harvey Weinstein sexually harassed me in 2011. He asked me to go to a career meeting. It turned out not to be a career meeting. I won't rehash all the details except to say that my mother's here, and she was very excited and said, "Oh, Jessie, I think that this is your big break, and I'm so excited. All your hard work is going to pay off." I mean, it was Harvey Weinstein. He was like my idol. I had no idea. I had never heard any rumors about him. So I was very excited. It turned out way differently. So that was, he sexually harassed me, but he never touched me. I wasn't assaulted by him. But when everything was happening, when I heard about an article being written about him, I reached out to Ronan Farrow. I reached out to both the New York Times and Ronan Farrow got back to me first. And with that, I had a lot of press opportunities. So I took that. I was sexually assaulted in 2012, and I went to the police, and they completely failed to investigate what had happened. But that assault is what gives me the passion for this movement. It wasn't so much Harvey Weinstein, it was really about my assault. And I knew that I wasn't the only victim. And I felt like with the Me Too movement and everybody coming together and reporting, it just made sense that there needed to be some sort of way to track serial perpetrators, because sexual offenders really tend to be serial offenders. So there needs to be some sort of reporting mechanism to track that. So I set up this simple email, and it was whoisyourharvey@gmail.com. And I wrote an op-ed about my assaulter, who was my talent manager at the time. And within the first day or so of that being published, I had 20 emails about him and hundreds of people emailing me. This was just an email account. This could have been set up, this type of mechanism could have been set up by our industry years and years and years and years ago to prevent something like a Cosby situation. So many victims could have been spared. In the process of developing that, Caitlin was when I first met Caitlin, she was very interested in helping me develop it. Caitlin's assault happened in 1996. It's just a no-brainer to have something like this, and we've had such resistance with our industry. So having something, having something like this in place was hugely important to me, and I've been working on it ever since. It's taken a toll, not only emotionally, physically. My husband's here, my mother's here. But with this development, we have had such huge success with so little support. It's been really, really phenomenal. So that's how it started. It started with an email account.
Do you have a track on how many unions you've made?
So we've had close to 300 people report. We've had 85 people mentored through us, either mentored or given legal support. There have been 12 people that have lost positions of power that you have seen in
The news
the news.
coming right off your organization.
Yes, and eight people, 8 cases investigated, settled, or in the criminal cases, criminal cases too. So the numbers that we have, the statistics that we have, and nobody else has them. So that's voicesinaction.org. Yeah.
More than any time ever. I think it's just important that we continue on, and it's not just about right now. We need to talk about legislation. We need to talk about more women in power positions. We need to take conscious, effective steps to continue this movement on, and I feel like it's happening.
Responsibility, when you hear an accusation over and over again, is to stop working with these people. I said this before, if everybody who knew about Harvey Weinstein just refused to work for him or work with him or hire him, he would be rendered powerless.
Now that you have come public with your story and you see that the floodgates have opened and there are so many women, what is your advice to young women who find themselves in that situation?
Well, I understand obviously how difficult it is to come out against somebody in such a power position, but there is strength and safety and community and numbers. And if you can find that courage to speak out, the support is there.
Tell us about these statistics. 94%. 94% of women will experience sexual harassment. What does that do? I mean, it's just, none of you set out to be activists. You just wanted to be an entertainer.
We just wanted to act. We just wanted to act.
Hopefully that's going to change. You know, that's why we're working with SAG to set up preventative measures on sets. And actually, Jessica and Lili they just helped pass 3 laws, sent a letter to Gavin Newsom, which about 100 of us organized and signed within like a day, that helped pass 3 laws
What are they?
related to sexual harassment. Well, one is Governor Brown turned us down last year, but we got it passed this year, right?
Gavin
It's
said
to
yes.
extend the statute of limitations for reporting sexual harassment in the workplace from 1 to 3 years. 3 years isn't enough, but it's better than 1 year. And then you guys talk about the other ones, because Jessica really
Yeah.
crafted the letter and got this
along
out.
with Mira Sorvino,
Yeah,
Jessica, myself, and Mira Sorvino, we worked for around the clock for about a week getting hundreds of signatures. But one of the other laws, bills, which is really greatly important, of course, is the no non-rehire clause. Because so many times when people settle in employment discrimination cases, they are required to not be rehired by the same. And this is really critically difficult because it's not just the company, it's also the people with whom the company is associated and its associates. So, and the third one, you want to talk about the third one, which is?
No non-disclosure agreements, which is phenomenal.
Disclosure agreements.
It's in California, and as we've seen,
Forced arbitration.
forced arbitration.
Yeah.
That's another law.
Say it.
You say
Say it,
it. Say
Lili.
it. Say it.
That's another one that we're working
My
on.
Ivy League
No,
sister.
Yeah.
You talk about
No,
it.
well, Jessica, it's okay. I just want it, just for what's the word? Authenticity, whatever. You know, she's right. We're working on that now. But the third one was actually no forced arbitration within in-house, because of course that complicates things if you should decide to pursue it criminally or civilly. But yes, what
Also,
Jessica
no,
is
not
talking.
in California, no non-disclosure
Yeah,
agreements.
That was 2018. It's hard to keep track of the bills that we keep passing, that we keep helping to get passed, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
are busy.
But you know, I'd like to mention a set of stats that I think is very telling about what the worth of a woman is in today's society. that 1 in 4 rapists are prosecuted if the victim is a woman. 3 in 4 rapists are prosecuted if the victim is a man. So what does that tell you? You know, what is the worth of a woman? Is it 2 goats, 10 chickens, and a pig? And, you know, and, you know, because in many places in this world, that's exactly what the worth of a woman is, you know, and we have to change that, that value system. You know, we have to be uplifted, and we have to join together, and we have to think of the future. We have to think of the generations. I'm a grandmother of 5, and when I look at my little granddaughters and I think, oh my God, you know, to see them have to be confronted with what we have all been confronted with, it just makes me sick inside. And I think I've got to do something. I've got to do something. And I think we've all been at a place where, you know, we reached our tipping point, and for each one of us, it was something different. For me, if I may, I saw Barbara Bowman, one of our sister survivors, trying to be believed about being raped by Cosby for 30 years. But it took a Black male comedian, Hannibal Buress, to make a joke about it in a stand-up routine in a nightclub in Philadelphia, and suddenly it went viral and everybody believed it, and that was my tipping point.
Yeah.
And it's been, what, 50 years since I was raped by Bill Cosby, but in 2014, that was what set the little red rocket off that exploded in my head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jessica, you put up those statistics?
Yeah.
Those statistics are so critically important, and that's what actually helped make a difference between the Cosby retrial, rendering a guilty verdict, and the first trial in 2017 ending in a hung jury, was the fact that they had the very first, in the retrial in 2018, just last year, the very first witness whom the prosecution put on the stand was an expert witness, a forensic psychiatrist by the name of Barbara Ziv, who dispelled the rape myths to the jury by bringing statistics such like the ones that Jessica brought up, indicating, for example, that federal statistics show that more than 80-something% of rape victims are actually raped by someone who is a known, trusted, beloved individual. That explains why rape victims often go back to the perpetrator. We go back not because it was consensual, we go because we knew our perpetrator, and we want to make it right. We want to understand, how could you betray us like that? She also told us that like less than 2% of rapists ever see a day behind bars. And so that, of course, makes a rape victim less likely to even want to try to press charges. So these statistics are very important because they educate people, they expose rape myths, they really changed shift culture. So I hope that in your Harvey Weinstein trial that it's as creative as ours. What we saw.
There's a problem with the criminal justice system, though. So, and just what you were saying, Victoria, about, you know, being believed as a victim, because at that point you are a victim. Being believed in our criminal justice system and having to prove that you were actually assaulted by somebody that most likely you have known, is just, it's almost impossible to get, at least in LA, to get them to press charges. The standards in LA to press charges, to prosecute an assailant is, these are the standards. We have to convince 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt that they committed this crime. So those are conviction standards. It shouldn't be filing standards. If you are going to hold that kind of a standard for filing charges, just filing charges against a serial perpetrator that you have multiple victims most of the time against, then you have to hold the investigative process to the same exact standard. If that investigative process has not been held to the same standard, then you have to reevaluate your prosecution standards. And that is not happening with Jackie Lacey and her special task force that she set up in 2017 for Me Too cases coming forward or complaints coming forward. And that is a serious issue that we have to tackle. And I truly believe that with everybody sitting up here on the panel, and hopefully anybody here that wants to help, that we can actually bring attention to it and change that.
We have to wrap up, so why don't we end with where should people contact? What Voices in Action? Is that,
So
and then they'll
Voices in
find everybody
Action,
else?
voicesinaction.org, if something has happened to you, even if you don't believe that they've done it to somebody else, it's a way to document it, timestamp it. You'll get an alert if somebody else names your perpetrator, and then you'll get free legal consultation and the possibility of connecting with other victims.
And that connection has been absolutely vital for all of you on every level and for all of us.
Absolutely.
So I just,
A lifeline.
I know
You
we
can find
always
us all on
speak,
social media too, so.
All
if
on
you have any
social.
questions or
yeah.
thoughts or ideas.
And I didn't have a chance because we are racing the clock because there's just too much great people here tonight. We want to get to our sustainability panel, which is, I mean, it's the CEO of LAX, it's the head of sustainability for United, who's going to unveil, the future of how we're going to fly with biofuel. It's the CEO of Tree People, and Lori David, a fantastic executive producer of Inconvenient Truth and Biggest Little Farm. So don't want to take away from them. Everybody, I know that I'm joined by everybody out there and in here and applauding all of you for all of your work and for turning, for coming out of the little ball that you want to be. You've all curled up into a little ball and coming out and just speaking out and causing all of this change. And I hope that you'll come back to acting. Are you acting?
Oh, yeah, I never gave it up. I mean,
Good. Okay. We all want to come. So everybody follow these people on social media and let's see them all.
Lily and I just did a play together, the Pussy Grabber plays.
I played one of the Trump survivors, and she played my mom.
I played her mother. Yeah.
And
Thank you all.
thank you, Ondi. Thank you. No, this is wonderful. It's so wonderful.